Ikaw. Nabali ko pa siya, guys. So, ayan yung gusto ko sa buhok ko ngayon. Although hindi ko kayo nakikita. Saan na kayo? Hello? Ayan, char. Grief has presented itself to me in the recent years. Ang feeling ko, nagsimula siya when my father died. My father died in 2019. I'm trying to put this in such a way that will not dishonor my father because it's like a tricky situation. Hindi kasi kami close ng tatay ko. Mas close ako sa nanay ko. I didn't grow up na parang meron kaming open communication or what have you. Parang hindi siya regular dad-daughter. Simply put, hindi kami yung ideal father-daughter relationship. As I've pursued this path of like really understanding myself in light of what happened, I also have found myself to like be sorry for not being a better daughter to her and also forgiving him for not being a better dad to me. There are things in our life I feel that are hindering us to like be our best selves, diba? I could be a more perfect mother today but I'm not because of blank. Ganun din yung mga parents natin. And I think it was a process for me largely na over the years as I was getting older and more independent na yung mga nanay-tatay natin ay mga tao lang din at may mga sugat silang dinadala sa puso nila na naki-carry on nila sa kanilang mga relasyon sa atin as our parents and as their children. And so when he died, it was like broken to me over the phone by my sister Paula because at the time nakalipad siya to see my dad. Sabi niya, ate, wala na eh. And I said, anong wala na? And I think I said something like, baka naman pwede pa or check mo, parang ganon. Hindi agad nag-register sa akin na pagpatay na, patay na. I mean, like, why would somebody say na patay na kung hindi naman patay, diba? I was just in shock that somebody so close to me in that sense, like, biologically, would pass away. These are things that you never kind of, like, think about na, syempre, buhay ka buong buhay mo, kasama mo yung mga magulang mo and all. And you never naman really think of, maybe you do, I didn't. You know, one day, your parents are just gonna pass. And maybe I did na, oh, mamamatay din yan. Pero yung you never took it to the level na anong gagawin ko pag wala na nga talaga. So, when that happened, I was in shock. And from that point on, I felt like it was my introduction to Grief 101. When my papa died, isip ko, wow, ito pala talaga yung hope natin kay Jesus. Kasi marami akong hang-up sa relasyon naming dalawa na never ko na mafulfill. At marami rin akong hang-ups para sa kanya. Yun nga isang na-realize ko about grief na you grieve for yourself, you cry for yourself because of your loss. And then when you begin to like really think about it, you also cry for the person who died, for all the things that he has lost or has never had. And then you begin to cry for other people. You begin to cry for your mom, you begin to cry for your siblings, na all of us are experiencing this kind of loss. But probably in very unique ways as well. Iba-iba kasi yung relasyon natin sa iba-ibang tao. I also began thinking about heaven, the idea of like, where do you go after? I did think of this naman na din before. It's just that when somebody dies and he's really, really close to you and you kind of like are super hung up, naisip mo na, magkikita pa ba kami ulit? May pag-asa pa ba siya dun sa next life? It was a very tough time for me. However, when my sister died 3 years after, mas grabing impact sa akin. And maybe it's because closer talaga ako sa ate ko. Ito yung ate ko na yung age gap namin ano ba, 16 years. And when I was a baby, it felt like she was also kind of like a second mother to me because she was already old when I was born. And we spent a lot of time together, especially as, you know, as a baby and as growing up. Tapos nung nag-start na magtrabaho. So nung namatay yung ate ko, as in physically, nafe-feel ko na pumapadyak yung kaluluwa ko, if that even makes sense. Every part of me was resisting the thought of nawala na siya because I can't not have her. I cannot not see her anymore. I just can't not have her in this world and not hug her again or hold her again and all that. After nun, di ko maintindihan na parang nagugutom ako pero hindi ako makakain. Pagod ako pero hindi ako makatulog. And there was just this very strange, overwhelming feeling in me na lagi akong natatakot na ang taas ng anxiety ko na feeling ko mamamatay ako, may mamamatay na iba. I don't know. It just felt like I was afraid for the most part that somebody would die again. I don't know. I think I got traumatized. Or is that impact of like losing my sister that bad na yun na yung naging wiring ko na lagi lang akong natatakot. And as a matter of fact, I feel like kakalagpas ko lang sa point na yun. So she died 2022 and it is now 2023 and it's gonna be her first year in like about a few weeks of like being dead. And I feel like kakalagpas ko lang sa point na medyo shaky and nervous ako from her death. I actually don't know why, but parang ito yung death na mas nahirapan akong maniwala. Meron nga akong narinig na preaching ng isang pastor who also recently just lost his son. And that's very tragic and it's very traumatic. And then one time he was preaching in our church and said that, grief will make you re-examine your faith. And that's kind of what happened to me with my sister, na parang, Lord, you just have to be real. Because if not, there is no redemptive quality in all of this na na-experience ko. Na nawalan ako, nasaktan siya, naghirap siya. Pero all for what? Kung wala tong pupuntahan, magiging mas masakit siyang isipin.
Crash hard! Broccoli, is that you? I'd expect to find...
Thanks, officer! Come on, Brock, this way!
Everybody, children, dance. Oh, now. Yes.
Hey guys! So we are finally here. I'm going to meet our very special guest here because they are the ones who are actually running this content house. We're gonna go to this place. This is a new part of the Ballarat Content House. Pwede ba to? Hello! So si Feliz, am I supposed to go here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hi! Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hello, 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 hello. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. No. Sa vlog. I mean, like dun sa start ko. Okay. So, if it's okay, can you give us like a brief background on where this entire grief journey started for you?
Ang timely actually ng vlog mo because yesterday is actually the death anniversary of my daughter. Kaya sabi ko, maga ang eyes ko. Maga. Maga. Ganyan. My daughter died at around 3 years old and 7 months from a very rare leukemia, which is JMML. I'm not counting anymore. I don't know if it's 7 years ago. Ganun na ba katagal?
What was your first reaction when you found out na ganun pala kalala yung sakit ng anak mo?
Mixed emotions because for 2 months, we were going back and forth in the hospital and walang diagnosis. So how can we help proceed and treat her if we don't know what her sickness is?
Yes.
So when we flew to Singapore, they thought that they had the answer already, but they were still wrong. So they had to send the documents to Germany pa ata, and then eventually they were able to confirm it's JMML. It's very, very, very rare na leukemia. So there's no specific protocol. When she was diagnosed already, mixed emotion kasi, uy, finally, may diagnosis na tayo. Let's move forward. Ano kailangan gawin? What do we need to do? Let's do it now. But at the same time, grabe ang tagal. Sayang yung months that I could have done something.
Because if you had found out earlier, would there have been like a bigger chance?
I think so, because her body was already weak. Imagine for 2 months, her body couldn't take in nutrients anymore. So that's 60 days of having no food and fluids. And you're just enduring all just chemicals and medications lang. And we wanted to go through bone marrow transplant immediately, pero she didn't make it na in time.
How long did you have to fight for her life talaga? Since the time of the diagnosis until her death?
My mother-in-law passed away December 21st. We went to the ER midnight of New Year, which is 31 ata. So from then on, puro tests na kami. And then she died March 31.
That must have been really tough for you. Ikaw ba yung tipong, hindi mangyayari to? Or yung preparing ka na for the worst?
For me, I knew that there was a sickness already. I want to know what I need to do and let's do it quick. Find the solution, do the solution, treat it immediately. I think you're in a war eh. So, when you're in the middle of a war, you're not thinking of losing, you're not thinking of winning. You just want to just survive at that present moment.
Wow.
Ayaw mong mamatay, ayaw mong mabuhay. I just want to be where I am now and be present with where I am now.
I completely understand na you're not thinking of losing and you're gonna do everything to win without really saying na, I know for sure I'll win.
Yeah.
On the day that she died, ano yun? Parang alam mo na ba na ito na yung araw na mawawala siya?
Kasi her lungs, she couldn't breathe anymore and she was wearing a BiPAP. Our doctor was a Filipina, so one of the team. Her oxygen level is not improving, so what are we gonna do? We need to intubate her. Kasi ko patay, intubate. Lahat ng nababasa ko pag nag-i-intubate, namamatay.
Oo nga, oh my
Parang
gosh.
ganon. Sabi niya, yeah, we're gonna do it the following morning. So we didn't sleep. like madaling araw salitan kami ni JJ. Kasi there's a room then before you enter the room, like a monitor room. I was just really bawling to God, Lord, please give me a miracle. But at the same time, if you want it to happen, then do it. But Lord, you know, give me, you can do it naman eh. You can stop the rain if you wanted to. Then do it. Pero sige Lord, I surrender. But hindi, parang ganon. Ganon yung level of wrestling ko with God. So, nung morning na, she was being prepared. We were talking already. When she was sleeping, I was reading to her stories. But nung morning na, when people were coming in, so I was just holding her hand. I told her, Katie, they're just gonna do an operation on you. And then, you press on mommy's hand if you hear me, okay? If you hear me, you press on my hand. You try it now. So, she pressed on my hand. So, I know she understands.
Okay.
She's really awake. Mommy loves you, okay? Can you tell mommy that you love me? So I just want to hear. Then she said, Mom, I love you. And then I told her na, just in case, if you don't hear mommy's voice anymore,
Tissue na tayo. Dahil kung klaseng vlogger ako, wala talaga akong
sorry
dalang
kasi
tissue.
sabi ko kasi sa'yo talagang medyo fresh ang aking tears from
I
yesterday.
know.
So, sabi ko kay Katie na I know that Jesus will call your name. You just let go of mommy's hand and you run to Jesus immediately. Tapos nag-last picture kami together. I just wanna show love wherever I can at that very moment. Tapos sabi nung doctor na she's passed out na. Down na siya. So, they were trying to do intubation na on her. And then, I was just there in the room watching. And I couldn't wait anymore. I went inside and then, Mommy, she's not responding. I was just at the foot of her bed and then I said, it's okay, you can let her go. So, parang, in a way, in my mind, hindi naman final ang death. I want to choose that idea that it's not final.
Right.
I screamed and then the doctor said, oh, huwag ka na umiyak, ayaw niya ni Katie. Tapos sabi ko, patay na nga siya, let me cry, let me scream.
Talaga?
Oo. Tapos I just lay down beside her and I just really cried and screamed. And then we took turns ni JJ while she was still warm. I wanna remember her. Let's take her
Remember that.
picture together.
Oo.
This is the last time that we're gonna be together that she's still warm.
Was Ethan there? Or was he here in the Philippines?
He was able to visit 2 days before. For me kasi, a child also grieves. And you
Exactly.
cannot take that grief away. They also need to be present. You can't, she's still sleeping, make death not a taboo conversation.
It's one thing to be in the fight and it's already another thing to lose that fight. Paano mo na-experience yung grief na yun pagkatapos mawala ni Katie?
It was, a battle for me. Honestly, if people also ask, there were a lot of suicidal thoughts. We lived in the
Really?
30th floor. Let's just jump off. I don't care who I'm gonna leave behind. It's too hard. I just wanted to end whatever feelings that I had. And then, my way of grieving, I just wanna be staying in bed and then just question. Gigi naman wanted to leave. So, dun kami nagka-fight na we had a temporary separation din. And then, Ethan would just go back and forth with us. We would go to work together. He would still pick me up for work. But I needed time to think. And then, he also needed some time. But I'm just really thankful that he didn't give up also. I kept on pushing him. I guess growing up then, because of the things that happened in my life, I always push people away or run away or flee. I don't want to handle this. I'll just go away. Flight ako eh. Hindi ako fight. I'm a flight person. So, eventually, parang I'm just grateful he didn't give up.
You were grieving, you had suicidal thoughts. Hindi ka rin ba makakain, makatulog? Ganun ba yung grief journey mo when she passed?
I lost my sense of taste. I couldn't
Wow.
taste anything. So I would just eat because I needed to. I had a lot of anger. I think na ko rin yun sa son ko. Parang I felt na naneglect ko rin siya. Kasi I would just be quiet and being angry and cry. And he would need to comfort me. So
Okay.
that burden, unnecessary burden for him at a young
child,
age.
yes,
For a child.
oo.
But yun it was too much. I had migraines and then I lost my sight. Oo, parang
Paano?
naging blurred yung eyesight ko. So I went to doctors and sabi there's nothing wrong with your eyes. And then what happened? Tapos I told her my daughter died. Okay. And then I had kidney stones. 2 shockwave ako, nag-double J stent pa ako. Ang daming nangyari physically to me. So grief pala, if you do not face it head on and you just try to fix it fix the grief. I don't want the grief anymore. I'll just try to rationalize myself, understand it. It will have physical manifestations wherein I lost my eyesight, I had migraines, I was pre-diabetic, I was diagnosed na for that, and then I had kidney stones, and then loss of taste, blurry eyesight, and when I was pregnant with Kalea, I couldn't carry her well. Bed rest ako the whole time. So, bleeding talaga.
And previously, you were not like that with your
Yes,
pregnancies.
oo.
Okay ka naman.
Yes. So, physical manifestations talaga. Nagkaroon din ako ng depression. I did take medication and I understood na it's just really to jumpstart it. So, it's
Correct.
good na you don't depend on it. Kumbaga parang sa kotse, nawalan ka ng baterya, kailangan mo lang
Isa lang
someone
na
else
ganon.
to just
Oo.
jumpstart it. Kasi you lose connections in your brain, diba?
Curious lang ako. Ano daw ang connection ng blurred eyesight sa grief?
Yun nga, physical manifestations na siya eh. Your synapses, well, ganyan. It's scientific na to
Yun nga eh,
No,
kaya nga
brain-
very ano
brain
ako eh.
connections, ganyan.
Oo.
Brain connections siya. You lose bridges of your brains. Yung connectors mo, nawala yung bridges niya. That's why sometimes, you need jump starters. Or, that's where food or nutrition comes in. Because that's the one wherein inflamed yung brain mo, that's why hindi nag-work properly yung eyes mo, inflamed yung brain mo, that's why
see.
hindi nag-work properly yung organs mo, inflamed ka. That's why your sugar level is also high.
Ay, oo.
Imagine mo, emotions mo na nga on fire, katawan mo pa on fire. Tapos you're depressed, so you're not eating. You're just quick fix.
Yeah, I was gonna say, di ba sabi mo nga, dapat nutrition comes in. Pero ito rin kasi yung panahon na hindi ka naman makakain. Lagyan niyo na lang po ako ng swero. Parang ganun na lang, di ba?
Yeah.
You said earlier that you separated. How long did you have to like be away from each other before you realized that, you know, kaya na namin to be together again?
Short time lang, almost a month and a half, around like that. I had, admittedly, I would innermost parang blame him na there's something that may have been wrong with us, with you, with our past. Yun, ang dami kong wrestles and assumptions and blaming. Blaming lang ako nun. That's my struggle with JJ nun. And then he said to me, which really changed my perspective on all my narrations. Ang dami kong narrative. And then he said, do you remember at the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus, who was all alone and everybody slept, and he wrestled with his father. Father, if you can take this cup away
yeah.
from me, please take it out. If there's a different way, kumbaga parang, uy dad, baka naman may ibang paraan.
I know.
Pwede bang
Correct.
wag na lang mangyari to in our today's terms, diba?
Oo.
But God said, was silent. He was saying no. He didn't end there. Jesus asked the second time, uy dad, baka naman may ibang paraan.
Baka naman.
Baka naman, diba? His father still said, wala pa rin. And then he didn't stop there. Jesus asked for the third time, Lord, baka naman, Daddy, baka naman, but if it's your will, then let it be done. So Jesus struggled and wrestled also, like what we did. If God would have wanted the rain to stop midway, He could have, but He chose to say no. God said no to His only Son. His only Son, nag-no na siya, who asked for 3 times.
Oo.
Then who am I to wrestle with God? To think that I'm better than His thoughts? Who am I to say that I love my daughter more?
Better, yeah, correct.
Diba?
Oo.
And I'm thankful that God said no to Jesus. If God said yes to the plea of Jesus, then we wouldn't have a gospel. If God said yes to Jesus and saved him from dying, then the people we love, your sister, my mother-in-law, or the people who have lost a loved one due to COVID, what would have happened to their bodies? Wala lang, ashes lang sila. Because God said yes. But because God said no to Jesus, we have that assurance na my loved one died, but it's not final. After that perspective na tahimik lang yung si JJ, pero may mga wisdom na ganyan, diba?
Praise God naman sa mga napangasawa natin.
Tumahimik ako noon, na parang nakakahiya ako. Who am I to have asked and gotten angry at God?
When did it feel like you're kind of like getting better?
When I saw myself that I could laugh without feeling guilty anymore. I would be happy. Ay, parang bakit ako happy? Parang ganun. I wanted to grieve a bit more. But when I saw myself, I could laugh again with my husband, laugh at jokes, at each other. Yung umiyak ka sa sobrang tawa, I knew na I'm getting somewhere. I'm on a better level of grief. I understood that you don't have to choose to live or to laugh or to grieve. You can actually let them coexist. Living and loving doesn't mean that you have to stop grieving.
And when was that? Parang mga a year into it or more? It was a pretty big blow.
She died 2016. I started to serve 2019, the year before pandemic. So, 3 years?
So when you studied grief, ano siya? Grief counseling? Is that it?
End of life coaching.
So when you studied, did they say that there really is like more or less like a rough timeline for things? Or is it really iba-iba for each person?
If you're able to face your grief and not bury it, then ideally, mga 3 years, ganyan.
So
Oo,
talagang medyo
processing it.
ano pala, yung timeline mo medyo nasa normal range in that ito yung sa mga taong na namatayan, ganun ba?
Yes. Unless you hear na, hindi, I'm okay, I'm not grieving, I'm okay. Then there's a possibility na
Mas matagal pa.
mas matagal pa.
Kasi hindi mo ina-admit. Ikaw ba na-admit mo kaagad? At the onset, nakapag-grieve ka?
I fought with it eh. I don't want to grieve.
Okay.
Kasi I talk with other people who has loved ones or children who died. And then they would come up to me and tell me, alam mo, 15 years na, 20 years na, pero until ngayon, ang hirap pa rin. Tapos when I heard that, I felt devastated na what? I will forever feel miserable?
Okay.
I will forever grieve? And I will never see the light? Tapos I hated that idea. So I tried to fight the grief. So I tried to rationalize it. I tried to give excuses. But it took physical toll on my body.
So the physical toll was actually helpful.
Yes, because it was the body's signal that, hey, you're not doing this correctly. So, you need to process it. Para siyang pigsa. Ayaw mong hawakan yung pigsa. Diba? Kasi masakit siya.
Kailangan mo siya i-push out.
The same thing with grief. You have to push it out. So, you have to let it burst. Let it all out. And then, pag na-burst mo yan, what happens?
Lumalabas lahat.
Pag lumabas lahat, what happens?
You get relieved and you're better.
Is it messy?
Oh yeah. So ganun siya.
But if you leave it there because it's too tender, it's too painful, what could happen?
May infect ka lalo.
And
Lalaki pa siya.
could lead to sepsis, a
Yes.
blood disorder, which could let you affect your organs to fail and eventually die. I realized I have to burst myself out in a safe area. Processing it is allowing myself to burst open, which is usually in my car in the traffic, and I just cry. That's why I'm like this.
Yeah.
Maga. Kasi I cry in the car. And I allow myself, Lord, talaga, I scream. Buti na lang soundproof ang kotse. And then after nun, okay, I'm good to go.
I like also what you're saying na you have to push it out. Kasi may mga tao naman, edi sure, sige, malulungkot lang ako. Pero to push it out actually entails action of like, ilabas mo. May willfulness din from your end.
The question some naman would say, gusto ko i-push, pero paano?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
You go back to exactly where it happened, narrate everything all
Really?
over again. Even try to close your eyes and see what happened exactly. And you can ask yourself, don't get scared to ask, what could have happened if I did this? If I didn't do this? And then, what is your truth? You go back to your truth. 3 steps. Your situation, my daughter died. What am I feeling about this? I'm feeling unsafe because she's sick and could happen to my children, ganyan. And then you go to the same scenario. My child died. And then what's the good feeling that you have? I feel secured because I know that it is not the end and it's exactly where it's supposed to be. To get to a different level of grief, you have to go back to your own narrative and in the same situation, what negative emotion do you feel? Ask yourself why you feel that. And then in the same scenario, what is the positive emotion that you feel and why do you feel that? And then you go to your truth and you hold to your truth. So when the time comes that you will have an episode, just like waves, diba? You will have another episode of grief that's crashing. Sometimes you want to visit your friend of grief na, o sige, gusto ko tang bisitahin grief. Like when I cried, I made a visit. Sometimes you go to a mall and then you smell something and you remember her.
Everything, oo.
Diba? Surprise visits, diba? Or sometimes, o sige, mag-schedule tayo to meet. But you have to go back to your truth. What's my truth? My truth is that when the time comes and I see her, everything will be made perfect and complete. Nagkaroon ako ng dream. Then ako nagkaroon ng closure.
So what was your dream?
Parang we were in an empty white space lang. And I saw her. And then I hugged her. And then when I hugged her, I felt everything I would have wanted to have felt with her here on earth. Yung birthdays, weddings, lahat. I don't know what specific it was, but I just felt it. Everything. And then when I let go, na-feel ko, uy, it doesn't matter. Kasi I'm with you already. You know, it may have been a dream or it may have been a daydreaming, but that specific moment when I opened my eyes, parang na-assure ako na yun yung lungkot ko eh. Alam naman natin na you're gonna see each other, yeah, but we're gonna miss out on milestones, on moments, growing together.
Right.
And I want to do that together with you. And I cannot do that anymore. So when that dream happened, parang, hey, it won't matter anymore kasi mafe-feel ko siya when I get home.
How do you even get to the positive when the pain is just so real and too large for you na I can't even see a positive thing to this? People who don't believe that you go anywhere else after dying, how is it for them?
Every one of us, it's harder. In the dictionary, there are more negative words than good words. There are more negative things to see than the good things to see. Just like here I am with art, diba? Just like when you look at, for example, Juan Luna, diba? You go to a national museum and see Juan Luna, and you're so disturbed. It gives you so many questions. The answer to your question is, don't stop asking questions, and you journalize them. There's healing with journalizing or vlogging or recording your words. There's healing when you let the words come out of your thoughts or you write it down. Kasi you let go of that struggle. There's great work with speaking. There's great grief work with writing. There's great grief work with doing artwork. And that's where you'll be able to speak. And when you write it down, when you draw, where you travel, where you record our podcast, God will exactly meet you and answer the questions only between you and Him.
I love your answer. Because don't stop asking is like really the only way to get to that point where it really helps you to move on eh. Ganun ang grief eh. Parang minsan naiiwan ka sa, hindi ko na talaga kaya mag-isip ng anything positive. Kasi good for you, good for me. More or less, I have something that helps me move on. But there are people talaga who can't think past the pain. What I like about what you're saying is that when you continue kasi to ask, tama ka eh, isang araw, masasagot mo yung hinahanap ng puso mo eh. And whether they believe God or not, for us, it's really God meeting you and answering your question.
But what's important is the support system. Choose one or two. Kasi as you ask questions, as you journalize on them, you need to make sure that you have a support person that will lead you to the truth. Because the questions, as much as they are, there will be a lot of answers to it. But you have to find out your truth. The good thing, I guess, with grief, malalabas niya lahat eh. It's not the onset of your grief, which got triggered, which is like a death of me, my daughter, would actually dig out. As you do your grief work, you process it, diba? You do your grief work, you question, and question, and question. You need another support system who would throw back the question at you so that you would be able to hear the answers that only you would understand. And they will be able to dig out, hey, my grief is not just my child. My grief is me having a bad relationship with my mom. It's my grief wherein I'm a people pleaser. That's why it's affecting me so much. My grief is when I lost everything. My grief is when I lost financial security. My grief is when I don't have a home. My grief is when I lost transportation. My grief is when I have abandoned my child. You know, grief doesn't have a direct linear narrative. It's so abstract, but it's so specific to you.
Okay, there are two things that I like to highlight in what she's saying. One is that grief work cannot be done alone. As much as you want to sound logical or be logical, rational, you can't be. Dapat may support system na fall apart before me, then I'll help you piece it back together, di ba? Other thing is that you mentioned so many things that you grieve about, and it is beyond the scope of just losing a loved one. Narinig ko rin to sa counselor ko dati. Sabi niya, did you grieve your loss of independence when you became a mom? Sabi ko, no. Did you grieve moving houses when you did? No. All those things you grieve
about kasi you lost something there. And that's kind of what you were talking about kanina, na ang dami pala nito, na sanga-sanga. And in fact, may mga nangyari na pala sa'yo prior to losing your daughter na ngayon lang nauungkat. Tama ba ako?
That's correct. I think that's the beauty of grief work. It allows you to also, as when you do your grief work, ang daming levels, you actually are able to get to your root hurt. What was it that was your root hurt? If you process it with another person, she will be able to help you na, uy, my root hurt, that's why I'm so affected with losing my child, with me having a bad relationship with my mom, with me losing my business, losing my house, losing my car, losing my relationship, neglecting my child. I realized that my root hurt was that I did not feel important. So when I found out that my root hurt was that I did not feel important, I tried to ask, where do I find my importance? If there's a root hurt, if there's a PTSD, there's a PTSG, post-traumatic disorder,
So, ito na-
post-traumatic growth. So if I have a root hurt, there should be a root truth. So I go back to my truth na I feel unimportant. That's why I'm so affected with my grief. And my root truth is that, hey, I am important and God has and will defend me.
Kaya importante rin talagang mahanap yung root ng mga bagay-bagay, no? Kasi it really helps. I think that's what grief does also. When my dad died, I think nakakatawa nga kasi lost siya, oo, grieving. Pero at the end of the day, pagkatapos mo siya ma-process, it's an identity thing. It's like who you are. Why am I like this? It's just weird that way that you're grieving over not being with someone, but at the end of the day, it becomes about yourself. And it helps you get over it. What do you do when someone is grieving?
So that's a good question, and hopefully more people will make it a habit. Being mindful with your words is the key. You are not supposed to give a person answers. A person who is grieving will always have a lot of questions, but ikaw as a friend, you throw back the questions at them. And they will be uncomfortable to, what? You're asking me questions and I'm the one who's asking questions. But you just re-transform that question and let that person find the answers from themselves. Help with resources, like find books, and then you just send them notes. You don't say, you're doing an amazing thing with your grief. Wow, you wouldn't want that, right?
Sandali, natawa naman ako.
Diba? Ask questions wherein specific questions would be, if you see each other, don't be scared to ask, hey, do you want to talk about your sister? Because a person who is grieving, you have to understand, may fear siya that the people or the world will forget the person that they love. The impact will be gone. So yun, ask questions, hey, do you want to talk about your sister?
I've noticed that I like to talk about my sister. And maybe that's it. Deeper than me, please don't forget her. She's like an amazing person. She can't be forgotten. So that's one helpful thing. What are other things?
Asking questions is the key. You don't give the answers, you ask questions. Like yesterday, I was crying while in the dining table, and then I just told my son, you know, Ethan, today is actually the day Ate Katie died. And then, I like the way he did. Imagine an 8-year-old
Yeah.
could ask na, what did you do last with Ate Katie?
Aww.
What does she like to do? What games does she like to play? Oh, she likes Lego. If she likes Lego, how come you don't play Lego? And it makes you think, right? When he's asking questions. And then at the end of the conversation, how do you feel now, Mom? Do you feel better after talking about it?
Why does he know this?
Siguro kasi that's how I talk to him.
So parang nire-repeat back niya lang sa'yo yung nagagawa mo sa kanya?
Siguro. And I realized, hey, it's actually effective. I know. Kasi nobody does that to me eh. I do it to people, but it doesn't get reverted back to me. So people would always try to make me feel better. Okay lang, sige, let's not think about it. Let's not talk about it. I'm scared to talk about it. Oh, let's go busy. Oh, let's kain tayo. Oh, ano mo, etong other things. Oh, nakita pa yung movie.
Parang ano eh, it's all evading.
What would you tell a person whose left leg got amputated?
I'm sorry?
It's the same thing with grief. You grieve that you can never walk on 2 feet again. But you learn your best to be able to walk on 1 foot. You will forever remember how it feels to have 2 feet, but at the same time, you know how it feels like with just 1 foot. So, grief is not a sickness. Grief is an amputation. It becomes a part of you, and it's not a sickness that you treat. No, your sister is like an arm where she always embraces you and hugs you, and it will be forever lost. And you will always remember how it was like to have two arms.
Yeah.
But now, you have only one arm, but you'll be stronger with just one
Kaya
arm,
pa rin.
hold everything, right?
Oo. That's very encouraging. Thank you so much, Feliz. Yeah.
Ikaw, so now that we're discussing
Aba,
this,
ako na. Bye, guys. Thank you, Feliz.
Alright, so guys, I am home and that was a long talk with Feliz, and I hope that you guys got something out of it. My prayer while we were doing the thing was that people who are grieving and then people who are actually in grief but do not know and acknowledge or recognize it yet will find a way to understand themselves in this time, because it can be strange to be in grief. It's not something that we were trained for. Like when we were kids naman, nobody talked to us about, one day you're gonna encounter grief like this, or a feeling of such great loss that can throw you off entirely. I think that I just wanna have a recap of what I learned from Feliz today. One is that never stop asking questions, and that a person who is in grief actually has a lot of questions. And sometimes what's keeping us stuck is the lack of answers, the lack of clarity and certainty about such a tragic thing that happened in our life. And so thus the importance of asking questions. You just have to keep on asking. The other thing that I realized is that every death that happens in your life begins to be about that person and your relationship with that person, but at the end of the day it will boil down to your identity. For some reason, it just brings you there. Na when my dad died, it became about my problems as a child of my father. When my sister died, it came down to, why am I so anxious? Where is that anxiety coming from? And then again, I find myself in the same old spot of ito yung root problem mo, ng inner child mo, na you just exist because others want you to exist, so you don't wanna exist for yourself. And lastly, na yung grief pala ay parang amputation nga ng isang parte ng buhay mo. Nawalan ka ng paa, nawalan ka ng kamay, kung ano man yung parte na yun sa'yo, pero hindi ibig sabihin nawalan ka na ng buong sarili mo. Pero may nawala sa'yo. At dala-dala mo yun habang buhay. Life will never be as full and as whole as how it was prior to this loss. But nevertheless, you can move on. You can still do great things with the other parts of you that were left. And I think it's just a matter of looking at what you still have instead of the one part that you've lost, but also not to deny yourself that you still got some parts of you working. And I feel like I can sleep better tonight knowing that I don't have one thing, but I still have many other things. I can still choose to be happy with those things while being sad for the thing that I lost, if that even makes sense. And I hope this helps you have a good grief journey. If you're grieving right now, have a good grief journey. And I will see you again next week. Thank you for watching. Everything that you need to know and would want to know from the talk, like resources and contact details and all, will be in the description box. Bye.